Hello, welcome back to Then and There. This is Marcia, and I have another journal share with you guys. This one is a hardcover book, which I have taken the pages out of and refilled. So, yeah, it is. Something has gotten on there. I don't know what it is. It comes off, though. It's like a powder. Anyways, it comes off. So, it is a vintage fabric covered journal, like the book cloth covered book cover, which I have refilled. There are 4 signatures stitched in with waxed thread, and I left the title showing because I like showing that it at one time had another life. Tied closed on here is just some seam binding, which I have colored using some vintage photo ink sprayed on there. It is decorated with this vintage cabinet card, which I added some gilding around the edge to. Anyways, there's a like a metal book corner here on this one edge because it does create a tuck spot behind it. I have done some coffee dyed paper with the word memories stamped on it for you to add in your own writing and sentiments. In the corner here is a little collage cluster of some sari silk and some vintage laces, cheesecloth. Layered up some buttons here. These are very old vintage buttons. And I added, well, there's this flower decal here, which I have inked up as well. And then I added on this butterfly, a metal butterfly piece. Which is also, it's glued as well as stitched just to ensure that it doesn't come off. And these corners here I kind of curled down because this one was close enough to the edge that when you picked up the book it was kind of sticking out a little too far. So there is an image here on this cabinet card of a little girl, and the theme of this book is mothers and daughters. So there are images throughout of women and children, well, little girls, that is for that purpose, mothers and daughters. So on the inside cover, I have put in new end pages, and behind that is some fabric, which I have inked up, and behind that fabric is some more fabric to reinforce this spine, just to make sure that it is sturdy enough. On the edges here, you can see there are charms and beads and laces and trims and things of that nature. Excuse me. I did leave the fabric sticking out so that it makes this little frayed edge. There's an envelope here with a wax seal with some lace and fabric and some gold thread embedded into the wax there. Clipped on is a vintage photo from Paris, or a vintage postcard, I should say. Inside is another paper for you to do some journaling on, and it has some stamping on it. It's coffee dyed and it has been inked. I put some masking tape on the edge here because it had the, like the glue to seal the envelope still on there, and I didn't want it to accidentally seal closed, like with humidity and things of that nature. So I just kind of covered that up just to make sure that didn't happen. We have an image here from a book. This is the original book page, which I cut down and stitched on with some lace and paper and some cheesecloth. And it says on there, mother and daughter. There's a pocket here with a tag, which has a collage. And there are several images of these girls. They're different girls. They're straight out of a ladies' home journal from 1913. So they are the original book page, which I have done some collaging with. Some stamping there. A vintage cookbook page with some collage here. And I did make some faux, like, vintage sellotape using alcohol inks to color, just to color some tape to make it look old. And I put it in several places throughout the book just for cohesiveness. As well, they do add some amount of strength to these very old book pages because they are fragile because of their age. And I also reinforced the spines on these pages with either fabric or some fabric tape. So you don't have to worry about these coming out easily. Here is a little pocket envelope, which I did some die cut, that's what that's called. And I stitched around it, and inside the pocket is this tag with some more die cuts and some fabric and lace. And it is a great journaling card there. And the pocket window frames this image, which is on the book page, which, as you can see, is a February 1927 Better Homes and Gardens is what that is. And it says right here. So you can see what that is. So it is an original vintage piece as well. That tucks in there so you can see the bird when the card is in there. A vintage receipt here with some collage on it of some of the book page and napkins and tissue paper. And that flips up. You can tuck something behind there if you wanted to. This is perforated right here, so this could be taken off and used as a separate journaling card somewhere else. I did some script stamping in different places throughout the book. Here's a pocket made with some vintage papers and a stamp of a typewriter, as well as some pattern paper. And it is on cardstock, so to kind of reinforce those vintage papers. A vintage cabinet card of a beautiful lady there. Some more of that magazine page, the cookbook page, and I added some of that tape just to reinforce it. There's a collage here with some papers. This one here has some gilding on it and a stamped image, as well as some trim. Excuse me. Some trim stitched on there with a bead charm and some stamping. A little tuck spot here made with some vintage table linen with this beautiful scalloped edge and some sari silk stitched on there, and I added on this metal filigree piece, which is also stitched on just to hold it a little more securely, and a stamped collage on some coffee dyed paper just tucked in there. A file folder which I inked up and did a collage on. This is some vintage hymnal page titled The Old-Fashioned Way and a place to journal. It is also has large journaling place on the inside as well. And I left this blank so you can put your own title or caption there if you want to. This is some reproduction of some Confederate money from Civil War era. And the reason I included that is because of these pictures of these girls and ladies working. Okay. Moving on. This is a vintage sheet music page, and it says Fleeting Hours, and I really loved the detail around the edge there. And on the other side is a little tuck spot with this bird collage, and this is a vintage envelope with the invitations in it from 1885. You can see there it says 1885, and this is an original. It's not a reproduction or a copy. It's the real deal. I have that paper clipped here with a paper clip with a charm on it. Some collage here with just gold tissue paper and some vintage wallpaper. Some ledger paper I have folded up here to make a tuck spot and a journaling place with a collage of some papers, just random numbers, just like a service ticket. And this is one of those vintage receipts again. I layered some pattern paper, tissue paper on that and did some stamping. Oh, and stitched around it. Glassine bag with some more of that pattern tissue paper on it and some ink and gesso, and I did a little collage here. This has a sewing theme. It has this needles image, which is just a cutout from some pattern paper. Layered it with some fabric and lace and did some running stitch along there. Inside is a journaling card with a sewing machine image and this beaded, or button trim, I should say, room to journal. Behind the glassine bag is also left to be a tuck spot, and this is a print of some vintage ephemera. And behind there is also the edge of a vintage handkerchief. Here's some vintage wallpaper, which has a embossed pattern on it, which I did some inking on. Create a tuck spot, and in there is a vintage postcard. This is 1945, talking about friendship, and it says thinking of you. Collage here with another one of those little girls from the 1913 magazine. Label and some more sellotape and a place to journal. Some script stamping, and some eyelet lace on this page. I just added some tape there. There was no tear. I just liked the aesthetic of it, the look. A little tuck spot here made with an eco-dyed cardstock, and added on some seam binding and cheesecloth. Made a little tuck spot there for this journaling card. This is a library catalog card. I did some collaging on that and tucked in another stamped collage behind there on some coffee dyed paper. A place to journal here with some lace and collage. Another collage with a die cut negative, fabric, and some paper. And this paper is reinforced with fabric. It has a little collage there. The number 5 is completely random. I just like those gold house numbers, or like mailbox numbers. Some like brown packing paper, which I did some inking on. A collage on this side with a vintage book page that says Popular Girl. And this is a printout of a vintage image there. Oh, make sure I'm in frame. Let's see. Some stamping and some lace on here with another little beaded charm. The other side of the packing paper and the sheet music. Another collage with another one of those girls from the Ladies' Home Journal. And some tape. I can't turn the page. Here we go. Some brown trim on there. This is a vintage playing card, which helps to hold this little envelope closed, which is empty, and you can add in your own picture or paper to journal on. A vintage postcard from 1911. This is an original vintage ephemera piece, as is this picture here of Natural History Hall of college campus, and did some collaging there. This is some very old tissue paper. It's in several places throughout the book, and it was accompanying some very old postcards from France. So they are very old. I don't know the exact date, but I would imagine early 1900s at the earliest. Some coffee dyed paper folded there with Pray stamped on it. Another piece of the cookbook paper page with a vintage image of a woman cooking. A little bit of fabric stitched on here with some lace that makes a little tuck spot with a stamped image which I cut around, and this is a vintage verse memory card tucked in there. A collaged, just a craft cardstock card, which I did a collage on here. This is an original vintage paper, sorry about that, with some collaged stamped images and book pages in place to journal, and a recipe card in the back there, or tucked in behind it. Some script stamping, another beaded paper clip which holds in this journaling card here, has some sheet music that I liked the title of, and I did some collage with some printed pressed flowers and this little bird here. This is a vintage image from a scrapbook from 1885, excuse me, which I layered on some fabric and stitched on, and just put in a little journaling card there. And that is reinforced with some fabric, and I love that this has some original handwriting on it. A little collage here with a vintage stamp and some other little book pages and pattern paper, and that flips open for some journaling. the cookbook page with some lace stitched on, and I did some masking tape. My words are not coming to me, to reinforce that, because it is an old book page, so it is fragile. Some little stamping up there, a fabric piece here, which is reinforced. I'm sorry about that. I should have turned that off. Reinforced with some cardstock, and that creates a little pocket with some seam binding and lace and a little collaged bridge scorecard on there. And this has a thesaurus page that has young, youngster, youth, youthful, things like that. And it is a journaling card as well. And there's the back of the book. And measurement is, let's just see, about 5 3/4 by 8 1/2. And of course, all the details will be in the Etsy description, so you can go check that out. The link will be down below, and it will be available in my shop for anyone who is interested. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye.